My name is Nawavili Sitali, co-founder of Youth for Parliament and Civica's Grassroots Changemaker Fellow. Over the course of the month, we held dialogues that were led by youth organizations, grassroots movements, and community-based organizations to discuss the funding landscape and the work that they do in the various communities of interest. And this is the reflections of some of the change makers and what they had to say about the dialogues.
And so I would therefore request that the big organizations, or rather the funders, they should adjust to the needs of young people and young organizations, or rather find out from the organizations what they really want and how they really want to implement their activities. If they have to apply for a fund, they should really find out from them which areas do you want us to fund you in, and not just advertising for a fund which already has their targeted areas of focus.
I think what I found very interesting and refreshing from the conversations that I've had with youth activists, human rights defenders, and young people from various social movements is the fact that we are all alive to the fact that the funding landscape currently does not speak to the needs and does not respond to our areas of operation, especially in respect to the ways that we do our work. Therefore, I think the funding landscape needs to be changed so that it speaks to the perspective of the implementers. In this case, these are the activists, these are the social movements, and these are the community-based organizations. So there's need for a roundtable discussion. There's need for relationships to be embedded in trust. There's need for more conversations and a deeper understanding, especially of how social movements work, of how community-based organizations work, and how organizations that are just starting up work. So the requirements and demands that usually the donors place before they give out the funds and the resources for social movements, activists, human rights defenders, and other organizations to receive are really not convenient. They are rather a little bit too much, because most of these young people have got organizations that are just starting up, and most of them are doing it for the passion, for the motivation, for the want to bring about a sustainable change in their respective communities. So there's need for the landscape to shift from being concentrated so much on the aspect of auditing and following up the money. It needs to change to begin to focus on impact. Is the resource and support that they are giving to activists, to human rights defenders, to social movements, what is the impact that that support and resource is building up? Are the communities changing? Are the communities being activated to bring about a change in shift in terms of the issues that are being advocated for? I think that should be the issues that the donors should be more concentrated about, in terms of being boxed in trying to follow up with the admin issues of finances, where this penny went, where that dollar went. I think we need to change the whole culture and focus it more on impact and focus it more on sustainability and development, which will actually lead to change and a better society for everyone else. Yeah, that's my take.
In addressing the challenges that community-based organizations and startup organizations face when it comes to issues of them receiving donor funds, I would recommend that the donors get to sit down with these local community-based organizations. They get to sit with the startup organizations. They also get to sit with the young people that have the ideas and come up with a solution on how best they can work as the big organizations and also the startup organizations, because these young people have the ideas, have the activities that they would like to implement, but then because of the bureaucratic systems that exist in these big organizations, they cannot penetrate through the systems. So I would recommend that there can be a table, they can sit on the table as young people, as startup organizations, as community-based organizations, and see how best these donor organizations can begin to understand them. How is it that they can make the funding applications more flexible instead of them being rigid by putting in place certain requirements that these startup organizations might not have.
I think by now we understand that every player in the development sector, that includes community-based organization and social movement, we know the role of the project cycle in reaching our intended goals. And we feel that the bigger gap that exists between CBOs and social movements is the lack of realization by the major players in the development sector and donors to recognize the stage of finding the issue. And that issue is that CBOs and social movements do not appreciate or are not accommodated in the financial payment systems of donors and big players in the development space, and also just the financial systems. So that hinders the expansion of initiatives that are founded by social movements and CBOs in communities. To address this issue, we need to get back to the table of making the donors and big players in the development space address that stage of the project of identifying the issue. That will entail that people come to the table and discuss the real issue that is being faced by social movements and community-based organizations in accessing not only intellectual capacity, but also resources to establish and expand their works in the communities, and in case of those that are operating at a national scale, at a national level, so that we can have people-driven change.
For any relationship to work, there is need for the parties involved in that relationship to talk. It is for this reason that we see the importance of dialogues between grassroots activists and those that enable them and fund their work. They need to sit at the table, discuss, talk, so that the work can become successful. A successful relationship between these parties translates into actual change that is going to be reflected in communities and a better world. We thank Civicus for enabling these dialogues to take place in the different corners of the world and in Zambia in specific.